What if the Aztec Empire defeated the Spanish? In 1521, one of the greatest cities in the world was destroyed. Tenochtitlan, larger than Paris, more advanced than most of Europe, fell to a few hundred Spanish soldiers and a terrifying weapon they didn't even know they were carrying. Smallpox. But what if that didn't happen? What if the Aztec Empire had survived, adapted, and fought the Spanish to a standstill? The map of the modern world would be unrecognizable. Let's get something straight. The Aztecs didn't lose to Spanish technology alone. Cortés arrived in 1519 with about 500 men. The Aztec Empire had millions of citizens and a standing army of trained warriors. The reason it collapsed wasn't steel swords or horses, it was disease. Within 2 years, smallpox killed an estimated 40% of the population, including the Emperor Cuitlahuac. Cities emptied. Armies couldn't be raised. The Spanish walked into a civilization that had already been gutted by a microbe they'd never heard of. So what changes? In our alternate timeline, imagine the Aztecs recognized the sickness early. Maybe they quarantine the Spanish prisoners. Maybe a priest-physician identifies the pattern and isolates infected villages. The population loss drops from 40% to 10%. Cuitlahuac survives. The empire stays intact. And now the Spanish face what they should have faced from the beginning, a unified, militarily superior civilization defending its homeland. Here's what people forget. The Aztecs weren't primitive. Their obsidian blades were sharper than Spanish steel, they just shattered on impact. Their armor of quilted cotton stopped arrows better than European plate stopped bullets, and they fought in disciplined units of thousands. In a fair fight, on Aztec terrain, the Spanish were outmatched 10-1. Without the disease collapse, Cortés's expedition would have been massacred in a week, and he wouldn't have been the last one sent. But each new expedition would have learned from the bodies of the last. And here's where it gets fascinating. The Aztecs were an adaptive, expansionist civilization. When they captured Spanish weapons, captured Spanish soldiers, captured Spanish horses, they would study them. They already had a sophisticated metallurgy tradition. Within a generation, they'd have their own steel, their own firearms, their own cavalry. By 1560, the Aztec Empire might have an army that matched European armies, but 10 times larger, fighting on its home continent. The Aztecs also weren't isolated. In our timeline, the Inca Empire fell in 1533, again, largely to disease. Imagine a world where both empires survive, where Aztec diplomats reach south by sea and make alliances with the Inca, where Mayan city-states reorganize under Aztec protection. By 1600, most of the Americas could be unified under a single Mesoamerican Andean civilization, the largest population bloc on Earth, with centuries of military experience fighting Europeans. So does Europe still colonize the Americas? Partially. The northern coasts, what we'd call Canada and the United States, still get English and French settlers. But Central and South America, that becomes an Aztec-dominated world. The Caribbean might be a contested zone. The Spanish Empire, which in our timeline was funded almost entirely by Mexican and Peruvian silver, never gets that wealth. Without Aztec gold and Incan silver, Spain never becomes a global superpower. There is no Spanish Armada in 1588. There is no Spanish century. Without American silver flooding European markets, the entire economy of the 1500s changes. There's no price revolution. No Dutch Golden Age funded by Spanish decline. The Protestant Reformation, which Spain helped crush, has a very different outcome. Maybe Catholicism fractures even further. Maybe the Holy Roman Empire survives longer. England, which in our history rose partly by raiding Spanish treasure ships, has to find a different path. The entire balance of European power shifts. Over the next 2 centuries, contact becomes trade instead of conquest. Aztec mathematicians who had advanced astronomy and a base 20 number system exchange ideas with European scholars. Mesoamerican agricultural techniques like Chinampa floating farms transform global food production. Old world crops and livestock flow into the Aztec Empire. New world crops, potatoes, tomatoes, corn, chocolate still reach Europe, but through trade, not extraction. A slower globalization. But potentially a more equal one. Does the Industrial Revolution still happen? Probably, but with 3 major civilizations competing for it, not just Europe. An Aztec Industrial Revolution, drawing on vast resources and population, could rival or exceed Europe's. Tenochtitlan, instead of becoming a ruined foundation under Mexico City, becomes one of the great global capitals, a city of temples and factories, codices and telegraphs. By 1900, the world has not one dominant civilization, but three or four, each developed on their own terms. What does the world of 2026 look like in this timeline? English is not a global language. Spanish is a minor European tongue. Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, is one of the world's three most spoken languages, alongside Mandarin and an alternate lingua franca of African trade. The dominant religions are different. The cultural exports are different. Modern music, modern cinema, modern philosophy, all shaped by a Mesoamerican sensibility we can barely imagine. There is no concept of a Latin America because there was no Latin conquest. The fall of the Aztec Empire wasn't inevitable. It was the result of an invisible catastrophe, a biological weapon no one had designed, that arrived before the conquerors themselves. History is full of moments like this. Tiny accidents of timing, geography, immunity. Remove one pathogen and an entire civilization survives. Add one and another collapses. The world we live in isn't the product of European destiny or indigenous weakness. It's the product of microbes no one could see, arriving at the exact wrong moment. Remember that the next time someone tells you history was inevitable.